So I was looking in Exodus. Will somebody read there in chapter 14, verses 13 and 14 for us, real quick, please?
And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he shall show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace.
Thank you. I had sent Pastor a text message about 2 weeks back asking if I think it was a Wednesday night prayer service I wasn't going to be able to make. Just asking for a boatload of prayer, to be honest. And it was of the things primarily of work, right? We had the UEI coming up. Me and the guys were working, anywhere between 12 to 16-hour days. On top of that, my functional manager in the MAGCOM kept shooting me tasks that needed to get accomplished. Tasks I couldn't delegate. One, because of the position I'm in. Two, because of the rank. And three, because if I had somebody to delegate to, they were not trained to do those tasks. And on top of that, looking at possibly traveling in March to Germany for another function, and kind of hoping that the money doesn't fall through for that, and I don't have to go to Germany, to be honest with you, and I can stay time with my family. But the point being is, we all, and I'm thinking of me primarily, we all have reasons to ask for prayer. We all have reasons to pray, and I think it's important that you do those things. I mean, I think God's Word teaches us that we should pray without ceasing, as you mentioned last Sunday as well, over everything and anything. I mean, the point being is that we are communicating with our Father in heaven. Amen. I think that's the main purpose. I mean, He is a jealous God, is He not? He is our Creator. He created us. He deserves all of our attention. Now, He gives grace towards things, like He gives grace towards marriage, and how that can take time away from your time to dedicate with Him and study and stuff like that. He gives grace towards work. I mean, He gives grace to so many things, but I don't believe, at least me personally, I don't think I should take advantage of His grace. Amen. I think that I should make sure that I am arraigning myself the correct way in my life. I think I should give credence to what God has given me, which is a life. Whatever use that is while I'm still living, whatever purpose He has set for me, But when I started thinking about all these things that I need prayer for, I started thinking about what God has given me victory over in my life, and then ways that I've created my own setbacks. And when I was thinking about these things, I went to the Bible and I was reading and doing a study, and I came across some things that were of rather interest to me, at least, and hopefully sharing with y'all. Maybe you'll have the same interest, but at least I want to give a bit of testimony and get y'all's opinions on things. Like I said, the topic is victory or setbacks. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not asking you to openly, I'm not saying come out here and say where you're sitting in your life or anything, but I'm going to ask you a question. Do you ever believe that you've done something that's created setback in your life? I know I have. On many, many occasions. And I know when I have needs, and when I'm hoping the Lord will meet those needs, which I know that He will meet all my needs in His time and by His ways, I often wonder, maybe that time doesn't come because of things that I'm doing that's trying to get out ahead of Him instead of just giving things over to Him. And then I also recall times I have victory. I'm going to be honest with y'all, because I mentioned this Wednesday night, for those of you who are part of the UEI as well, I don't know what happened to my inspector. He was with us Monday, and then he was not with us on Tuesday. He got told he had to go back to Germany. Now, I've heard some things, it's just gossip, but my inspection went well because it virtually did not happen. It was awesome. And all the stress and everything beforehand, right? To this point, and God gave us grace. Me and my people, whether they realize it or not, which most of them don't. And then opened up the window and opportunity for everything else that we have to get accomplished, to not have something else on top of that. And so we were able to get a lot of things that we needed to get done this week that we would not have either way. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I don't know often why, when it comes to the job or when it comes to anything else, why so many things are presented. And yes, I might not like it at that time, right? I might have to do this. Or this might come up and now it's somewhat important, like yesterday, washing machine broke. That could be a little bit stressful, right? But I do know that all those things, I don't blame God for. I don't think we should ever blame God for those stressors. And two, they must be for some reason and by some design, if not at most to give Him the glory for them. Right? And so those were where my thoughts were going this week. And we're here in Exodus, and we're reading about the Israelites and Moses. And the Lord leading the Israelites away from Pharaoh. And we get to these specific verses, as y'all just read. Now I'm going to read again. And the Bible says, and Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which He will shew to you today. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And I think this is a very important lesson to understand out of this entire chapter and chapters before, but even here in primarily these two verses, about how the Lord guides us in our lives. And for me, an even more important lesson about holding my peace. And when I need to hold my peace. I mean, what was God delivering Israel to at this point in time? What was his plan? Do y'all recall?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're trapped by the Red Sea.
Yeah. They were going to the Red Sea. They were trapped by it. But ultimately, further down the line, there was a land that was promised.
Take them away.
Yeah.
Promised land, as it was called.
That's right.
With milk and honey.
That's right. You know, God had a specific plan on how He was going to deliver Israel out of captivity. And I think it's rather interesting that the Israelites were trapped here by the Red Sea. And if you're looking at the preceding verses, and they thought that they were done for, right? But they should have known better because God had already given His promise to Moses at the beginning of the chapter. Will somebody read Exodus 14, start in verse 1, and go all the way to, you have to forgive me, my notes are a little bit impromptu. Start in verse 1 and go all the way to, where did I have this written? Actually, I'll just look real quick. Hey, go all the way to verse 4.
Should I go ahead and read that?
Yes, please, sir.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, but they turned and encamped before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon, because before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honoured upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so.
You know, our Father spoke to Moses here. He had already told them that they were going to be followed. And I think it's really peculiar that he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart in a way that when he chases after him, as we'll find out, as you can read later on, that it's going to be to ultimately his demise, right? It's going to cost them dearly. But it's there to give God the honor, right? He's showing his power. And that's what he ultimately wanted to demonstrate to all the Israelites, is his power. And that brought me back to what I was thinking on, especially given this week. How often, let me ask you this, when something comes to fruition, right? You've asked yourself in prayer, or asked for something, you feel like you're in need. When that thing finally does occur, how often do we go back and give God the praise for that occurrence?
Amen. Very seldom. Very seldom.
You think so?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. At times, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I ultimately give the God the glory for everything, or do I'm like, oh man, I'm glad that's over and I move on with my life?
Exactly. And that's what I say. Very seldom that we actually go back and give God the praise for it and thank Him for it. And and I can speak for me too. We have a tendency to come up with other reasons and don't really go back to the real reason to thank God for it specifically. We'll come up with other things. And then we'll say that we thank Him for it, but we really haven't given Him the praise and the glory for that specific thing, you know. We'll come up with some other reasons around.
Yeah. Brother Knapp, will you hold Exodus verse 12 there in Exodus 14? Brother Dave, will you look up Zephaniah chapter 1 verses 12 through 13? Did I pronounce that right?
So, yeah, no, that's just not a book I've read for a long while.
Yeah,
I have to check where it is.
It's one of those odd ones, right?
What was the verses again?
Chapter 1 verses 12 through 13. Brother Tim, will you look up Daniel 9 verses 13 through 14? And Brother Jared, I'm going to give you quite a bit of reading. Are you okay with that? Okay, Numbers 13 verse 25 through 14 verse 4. And if you want to split it up with Jacob, by all means. Would y'all both like to tackle that?
So Numbers 13,
25 through 14 verse 4. And by all means, split that up with Brother Jacob. Brother Lewis, Exodus 1 through 4, we just read it, but if you don't mind, sir, will you read it again? And Arnold, Micah 7 verses 5 through 10.
Mine takes us to 14 verse 12, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
5 through 10. Yeah. Talk about books that you hardly go to. I shouldn't say that, but really, and this is my opinion, I think when it comes to the Lord giving us victory or us creating setbacks, we have a very diverging path, right? Either one of whole dependence and obedience, or one of us trying to do things by our own merit. And sometimes by not doing anything at all. Now, Here in Exodus, verse 12, 14 verse 12, Brother Knapp, will you read that for us?
Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And so this is the way that his group, the Israelites, are looking at it. Here they were caught out there, as we would say, just for me to use a little quick slang, between the devil and the deep Red Sea. And here they were, they were scared. They were saying then, hey, Moses, didn't we tell you it was best for us to have been better for us to stay in Egypt and die than to come out here in the wilderness and die, because we have no place to go. Which, it coming up that I know I'm using a little bit of embellishment there.
Yeah.
But that brings up something that I have in my mind that, I want to bring up too.
Yeah.
And it's almost a personal thing, but but I think for me, it's relevant. And it's with Brother Arnold looking for a place right now. And I'm thinking, are you looking, this place that you're looking for, is it to buy or to rent? Which one are you at right now?
Just to rent.
Just to rent at the moment. And my question is right now, because when I read down here, when Brother Sean had us to read, what verse was that?
12.
That was 12, I
Yeah.
just read. Oh, and looking at 13. And when Moses tells them there, hey, to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. And what I'm getting at, the reason I'm bringing that up, I'm not going to be funny, but the reason I'm bringing that up, Brother Arnold asked for prayer. And he said for the Lord to show him exactly what he should do.
That's right.
So basically, you're saying this here. But you say you're going to just wait. So stand still and wait. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that how are you going to know, what are you looking for the Lord to show you, to let you know that it's Him?
Well, this morning I prayed that whatever message or messages that were preached today would speak to me in such a way that would give me peace about the decision. So whether it's this message, or it's pastor's message, or it's tonight's message, so that tomorrow I can wake up and know, this is what I want to do. That's what I prayed.
Okay, hey, I can understand that. But do you all see what I'm trying to say? That's what I think that we fail sometimes, is that we say we're waiting on the Lord and we want Him to show us. And I'm just trying to say, what are we looking for Him to show us? Is it usually we can find it in His Word, but do we really take the time to go and look in His Word to find it? And the reason I said that, like I say, not trying to make it funny in that, but it's a couple of things, that has come up that, in hearing the stories before, how people were waiting on the Lord and that, and certain things came by for them to do. Yeah, they had to pick up and do a little bit themselves. But anyway, at the end of the day, they were angry at the Lord because He didn't come out and just pour it down their face for them.
That's right.
And when you look at it, you can say, the Lord say, well, I sent so-and-so along there for you. Yeah, you needed to pick up and do that, but you just let that pass. So I sent so-and-so there for you, and you didn't do that. You just let that pass. So what do you expect me to do? And like I say, I'm not trying to be funny in that, but I do know that happen from time to time. And I've seen it happen, and it happened in my life. You have to be careful that you don't get out ahead of the Lord, but I do believe and know that we can't expect God to just come. Now, he could do it if he wanted to, but just expect him to come down and just open our heads and pour things right in them. There comes a time, there's certain things that we have to do.
That's right. And I 100% agree with what Brother Knapp is saying. And I'll add that to the testimony. It's completely changed the structure of what I've written down here, because that's the end result, is everything that you're talking about. But, sorry. I was going to say idleness with verse 12. Yeah, let's not be idle. That could be something that sets us back, right? And that will go into the other verses. But I'll go ahead and just move forward for an instant and share with you a couple things. All right, so we know that there are things that we can physically do that can set us back, whether it's being idle there in verse 12, Zephaniah 1, 12 through 13. If you want to, Brother Dave, read that real quick. But I see that as preserving things other than material things and not preserving God.
1, 12 and 13, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. Therefore their goods shall become a booty, and their houses a desolation. They shall also build houses, but not inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards, but not drink the wine thereof.
And then I see there in Daniel the need for us to change our ways, to seek truth, and to be obedient. That if we're not doing those things, we could set ourselves back, right? 9, 13 through 14. I mean, to be honest with you, these are all very apparent things. These are things that we already know, right?
Right.
But go ahead.
As it is written in the law of Moses, all this evil is come upon us. Yet made we not our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth. Therefore hath the Lord watched upon the evil and brought it on us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice.
That's right. And, when it comes to being obedient, I think the other side of that coin is to trust God. You can't have one without the other, right? If you're not trusting the Lord, are you obedient with him? You can't be obedient without trust. I mean, and that's why I brought up the verses there in Numbers. We won't read them now for the sake of time. But there in Numbers 13, moving through chapter 14, that's when the Lord had instructed them to spy on the promised land, right, before they went in. This was prior to them getting 40 extra years out in the wilderness. And they were to take that land, but they came back and whined and said that we saw giants and all these lions and tigers and bears. On mine, that wasn't in there. But, they did not trust that the Lord would deliver them. And because they didn't trust, they weren't obedient. And because they weren't obedient, they spent 40 more years out in the wilderness. And so these are things that I think are just very, very apparent. It'd be apparent to any of us ways that we can improve. But what about the not so apparent things in our lives, right? Have you ever given consideration to that? And that falls in line with what Brother Knapp's saying, especially with getting out ahead of the Lord. How many times do you think you haven't gotten out? I know there are times in my life where I'm like, I'm not getting out ahead of the Lord, but I actually am. I'll put it to you that way. Yeah. Just to be honest, there are definitely times where I'm getting out ahead of the Lord and hadn't even realized it. Okay. Think about this for a second. Why was it a sin to number the people? Why couldn't? Why?
So we're trying to depend upon our own strength. Right?
Yeah.
See if they've got enough strength to get the task done.
Yeah, that was.
God said, I can do it. You just have one person.
That was Samuel, right? And was it Dave as well? Didn't he sin by numbering people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he wanted full dependence on people. I mean, we could look at our numbers and be like, there's so many things that we could do here. And we could have a good idea and want to do a good work for the Lord, but maybe the Lord needs to present the people willing to do that,
Yes.
not somebody directing to do that, right? I can say I deal with that at work all the time. I can have so many great ideas, and we all know what good idea fairies are. Let's be honest, that's a military thing. The guy who's always coming up with stuff you don't want to do. I could have legit things that could improve, but without the people and the people to desire those things, it's just not going to happen. And I don't see my position in the military as positional authority. I see it as positional responsibility. And I think that's the same way that we should behave when it comes to church, when it comes to our personal lives and people we interact with. We might have a position in which we are accountable for, and yes, sometimes there is an authoritative aspect of that, right? But ultimately, there's a lot of responsibility. And that responsibility is very, very important. I mean, from Genesis to Revelation, you can read all about responsibility in the Bible and the different types of responsibility people have. And so when I was thinking about setbacks and everything, I was thinking about all my interactions and every thought I had and every time I wanted to step out and do something, and I just should have waited, right? I mean, because I can go to the Lord and pray about things that I need, but I shouldn't do it because I am unhappy with the Lord, because I know He's with me always, right? I know that He preordained things. I mean, y'all read it there in Exodus 14, 1 through 4. He preordained that the Israelites were going to go through the Red Sea and He was going to bring them to the promise. He preordained all that. He already said that this was going to occur, but yet they wanted to say this is God's fault. I believe He predestines. Sorry, we're skipping a little bit. Will you read Micah 7, 5 through 10, Brother Arnold?
Trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. Keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lie from thy bosom. For the son dishonoureth the father, the daughter riseth up against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemy is the man of his own house. Therefore I will look unto the Lord, I will wait for the Lord. Therefore I will look unto the Lord, I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy, when I fall. I shall arise when I sit in darkness. The Lord shall be a light unto me. I will bear the indignation of the Lord, because I have sinned against Him, until He plead my cause and executes judgment for me. He will bring me forth to the light, and I shall behold His righteousness. Then she that is mine enemy shall see it, and shame shall cover her, which said unto me, Where is the Lord thy God? Mine eyes shall behold her. Now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets.
He predestined long ago that He was going to save us as well. I mean, we are predestined, and He's all-knowing. Who comes and seeks Him and learns of salvation and gives themselves over in their heart. I mean, that's the thing. If you haven't given yourself over by your heart, you've not truly given yourself over. Have you not?
Amen.
And it's of those things that we know that we can have victory in our lives. When I need something, when there's a need, I am looking for God to fully close the doors and to fully present the opportunities. Just like now, my career field manager has killed promotions for the next 3 to 5 years in my career field. And that's on the back half of my current enlistment. So if I don't promote, I'll hire tenure and I'll be out, right? Is this guy closing the door? It could be. I don't know. I think it's an indication, but it's not enough for me to move on and say that this is the path He wants me to be down. When that door is closed, it is fully closed. It is very apparent. If I desire something, I desire to pastor or preach at a church. I know that. He's put that desire in me, and it is a good thing. But that's not enough for me to immediately quit my job and go out and do those things. He will lead me to that path. There was a time in Grand Forks when there was a pastor at Fargo Baptist Church, and they were looking for a new pastor of that church. And I was like, man, I talked to my pastor. I was like, if they really need this, I mean, I'm kind of interested. I might get out at this time, right? But I waited and depended on the Lord to show me what He needed me to do, and He had me go to lodges.
Amen.
Right? And that pastor ended up staying on at that church. I mean, how many times have you heard about missionaries struggle because they jumped out ahead of the Lord to do a good deed, but the Lord didn't provide them the path to be there?
Amen. And that, I will say this, adding something to that, brother. It's not exactly what you said, but adding something to that. It's kind of funny. When we are first saved, the only thing we think that we can do for the Lord is preach. Have you come across that? When you're first saved, I mean, we just feel like, well, we're ready to go, and we got that zeal, and we feel like that's the only thing that we can do for the Lord is preach. Because, you know, we got saved, and we want others to get saved, and how's everybody else going to get saved? We're running out preaching. That's the only way they're going to get saved. You know, we hear it all the time, you know, that the faith come by hearing and that. Well, how they going to get that unless Brother Knapp is preaching? It's preaching going on everywhere. But as a new convert, for some reason, I don't know what, and I've seen that happen so many times with people who get saved, and the first thing they think is that they got to preach. And some of them do. I mean, some of them are called.
That's right.
But most of us hop out in front of the Lord on that kind of stuff.
I know that everything that He has had me do in my life to share with y'all has been by His design. Everywhere I've been, I have learned something. I take what I learn and I put that in my back pocket because I know the Lord will use me with that at a later time. Absolutely. And so to kind of close, I mean, I was going to share with y'all a couple of things, as I've just stated, that the Lord has taught me. Ultimately, to depend on Him, Deuteronomy 31:8 says, and the Lord, it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. As ways that He has taught me to depend on Him. I mean, I'm not to blame Him. I'm to pray and glorify Him. Psalms 50:15. And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. And then bringing us back here to Exodus. In verse 14, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. That peace that's mentioned is silence. It's your mouth. It's your tongue. Sometimes we need to stop talking and start listening.
Amen.
And I'm going to be honest, that's where I can get myself into a bit of trouble. Because I can see a lot of things that can upset me, especially raising kids, right? If my son complains because he's tired and doesn't want to come to church service at night, that upsets me. I don't care if you've been up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I don't care if you work through the night. If I'm going to be here, you're going to be here. And you better not complain because everybody else is going to see those behaviors. Now, you can grumble and keep it to yourself. I understand that. Everybody's going to have bad days, but you ought to keep that to yourself. I'm going to be another honest with you. When I ask my kids to do something and they don't do it, when they see that their mom's busy, when they get older and they're not wanting to jump out and help out, I can't stand that. Even with my employees, I'm going to be honest with you. If I see people on their phones and holding up a wall versus seeing what work there is to do, that angers me. But I hold my tongue. Because the Lord will provide the right people to do the right works, right? Now, I can set a good example, and I will pray about those things. But beyond going down, and my kids is going to be a little bit different because there is parental responsibilities. But when it comes to people who are not my children, it's a different set of rules.
Right. So, that's great.
But that's, sorry, I kind of got off subject there for a second, but it's just how I see things.
All right.
I've got to let the Lord provide in all ways for all things and by His design. I shouldn't get out ahead of Him over anything. So, we've gone really long. I do apologize.
And it's, hey, that's been very good this morning. And you know, I'm just thinking too, that, where you coming from there, Exodus, bringing that whole area up, I think I kind of like it a little bit too. Because, you know, I told you I was reading in that area. And so, just reading in that area not long, and like when they say God hardened Pharaoh's heart and that. But when he had Moses to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, that was a shorter way that they could have gone.
That's right.
To get into the promised.
That's right.
But the Lord led them around through the wilderness going that way. But here again, just as we would think sometimes, and what Pharaoh thought, one of the things that he thought of, when they going that way, they don't know where they're going. So therefore, we can easily catch up with them. They're going to be lost out there because they knew that there was he knew that there was a shorter way that they could have gone. But he was taking them around the long way. Oh yeah, we'll just catch them out there in the wilderness there because they lost. They don't know where they're going. Hey, we either kill them all or make them come back. One or the other.
Yeah.
And that's what they were thinking about. That's what the children of Israel were thinking about. But God had passed it on to Moses. But the children of Israel were thinking about that. To say, didn't we tell you it was better for us to stay in Egypt and die than to come out here in the wilderness and the Lord kill us. But one of the things I like the way in the Old Testament, I like the way in the Old Testament how God had the Holy Spirit to help them to write some of the scriptures, because we can read the scriptures and just see how Moses, he didn't do it right then on this particular area, but he's done it so many times, how the scripture reads and say, you know, when God decided to do certain things against the children of Israel, Moses have used that against him.
That's right.
As far as that, they've said, you know, scripture read that Moses got on his face and called out to the Lord and said, Lord, you know, the children, they're stiff-necked in that, but you gotta bless them. Why? Because the Egyptians, first thing they'll say is that you were able to take them out of Egypt, but you couldn't protect them out here. And say, you know, you're not gonna let that come up on your name. I'm saying it, you know, not exactly the way the scripture said, but it means the same thing. And I just think sometimes, I like the way those scriptures read sometimes, and it just makes me sometimes, you know, I pray to God that way sometimes.
Oh, that's good.
And as I say, you know, He's our Father, and we're supposed to be able to talk to Him.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I do that sometimes, you know.
reverently, good Father.
Yeah.
But not being sassy, not being a sassy child, but,
Yeah.
you know.
I do too.
I think I said it once, I don't want to be a pestilent child, I want to be an obedient one. We're past 11, so will somebody pray for us real quick and we can get out to service today? Supposed to sound prayer.
Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this lesson. So timely, Lord, at this juncture in life where
Yes.
we see, Lord, sometimes we question the way that you have us go, as Brother Knapp said. It might be a shorter way, a quicker way to get things done. But Lord, you have us go through the wilderness for a purpose, because in that wilderness we learn to trust you, we learn to grow, and in the end, Lord, we'll come out better people than when we went in. And I just pray that whatever wildernesses we go through this week, this month, this year, that you go with us, Lord, and I would never forget that you love us and you want the best for us.
Yes.
And ultimately, Lord, I just pray we trust you.
Yeah.
As little children trust their parents, help us to trust you in an even greater capacity. All these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.